Welcome to the Chess Angle. This is not your typical chess podcast. If you're an amateur or club-level player, the Chess Angle is for you. Our content is aimed at busy adults who are serious about the game but have limited study time. Featured guests include both amateur and titled players alike. And now, here's your host, Director of the Long Island Chess Club, Neil Bellon.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am here this week with a Chess Angle regular contributor, National Master Nick Panico. This is one of our coffee talk episodes. We're going to kind of keep it loose, keep it light. We're going to talk about chess tournaments and being a savvy player. Nick's going to share some of his recent experiences. So, Nick, always a pleasure to have you on, and good to see you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. It's great to be back on, and I do regularly listen to most of your podcasts weekly. Often when I do it, it's when I'm driving to a chess tournament. That's when I'm actually listening to the podcast. So if I'm headed into the weekend, for a weekend tournament into the Marshall, I'll listen since it's like a 90-minute commute most of the time. It's a perfect opportunity in the car to listen to the podcasts or catch up on a bunch when I do a road trip. So you've been doing a great job, and it's great to see that you are getting grandmasters who are starting to regularly listen to the podcast. So in terms of the Chess Angle being a local club, focusing on like the local club for adult improvers, things of that nature, it's great that of the audience that you've built up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think with the grandmasters, obviously, most of their students are amateur players, so I guess, they like listening to the dialogue. Most chess players in the world are amateur players. Like, we forget that, right? Adults who are, let's say, beginners, rated up to about 1,500, that comprises most of the chess players. Titled players are actually a very small percentage of the population, right? But because of who they are in the title, it seems like there might be more of them, and they're given higher importance, as they should. But most of us playing in the world are at the amateur level. So I agree. It's great that they like to be a part of it. Now, speaking of which, how are you doing in your tournaments? I know you have some thoughts about playing with life distractions, and that's a big part of this podcast. So anything you want to share about that to kind of kick this off would be great.
Right. So, yeah, since we're, focusing on tournament savvy, which encompasses, right, it's a big umbrella because there's a lot of things that come into tournament play. And what I've realized, as an adult is it seems like the older that you get, more distractions naturally come, with playing in tournaments as an adult, as compared to a kid where, for most, children, their main distraction might be school. It's the nature of it. For serious scholastic players, probably school's not too big of a distraction because they're probably fairly bright and doing well in school. So it's like chess is their main, thing that they're doing, full time. Some of the children are putting in between coaching and playing. But as an adult, right, as an adult improver, as an adult player, you have so many more distractions. You have your job, you have relationships, maybe some health issues, family issues, family members. So all of those things, definitely come into play. Playing with the, distractions as an adult, I think it can be an advantage in terms of, being able to play with those distractions. And I've had some examples recently in the last couple of months where I've had some situations, playing in weekend tournaments where I've started the tournament playing sick. And I just said, you know what, I committed to the tournament. I want to play. I'm going to do the absolute best I can, game by game. And it has actually helped me. And then there was a tournament a month later I played in, where it's a 5-round tournament. There's 1 game Friday night, there's 2 games Saturday, and 2 games Sunday. And Friday night, I'm there at round 1, and I find out my dad, who's in South Carolina, he's at the hospital, supposedly with his wife, because he had a heart attack. So I find this out.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I find this out like right before round one. And, his wife was with him. It was under control. I'm up here in Manhattan. What can I do? So I decided, I'm going to play. I'm going to try my best. And, that evening, I think I won that game, round one. And then right after the game, my siblings texted me the same night that my dad was in South Carolina at the hospital because he was having problems breathing. The same night, I find out that my mom in Queens had a stroke. And yeah, so now it's like I'm not feeling well. I have all of this. And she was stable, They got her, under control, and she's in rehab now. She's doing really well. But at the time, at the weekend, I'm thinking, okay, now, I decided to play the tournament because, my parents were they were stable. And I said, I'm just going to try to do the best I can. And I played under those conditions. So I think that with distractions, there's certain distractions as an adult where you could kind of use, like, what's nice about chess, I think, is that it can be like an escape or an outlet. If you're able to channel it in that direction, then I think that could be an advantage, because when you do play tournaments that you don't have distractions, I think it's a little easier to play. Now, there are certain, I think, things that it could be a disadvantage. Like, for example, let's say you have other distractions like a job or relationship, maybe, a lot of couples, both partners don't play chess. So I remember one relationship I was in, and it was the amateur team tournament. And I told her that, this is an annual tournament. I'm going away to a hotel and I'm going to play in a chess tournament with my friends for, 3 nights. She didn't understand that at all. And I think for me, like that was a disadvantage distraction, because I know I'm coming back to a situation where there's going to be some turmoil. So can that affect my play that weekend? I think so. So I don't think I was able to fully get that distraction out of my mind. Maybe there's, Monday you're going to come back to, your job, and there's going to be a distraction there. So I think certain distractions you could use to your advantage, where chess could be an escape and you could just, encompass, each game. Where other distractions, maybe it's not worth playing because it hasn't been resolved and you just can't get through with that. Maybe you have kids and there's something going on with one of them. So it really comes as an adult to balancing those out and figuring what distractions you could use to your advantage, which chess could be an escape, and what distractions that are you're just going to be at a disadvantage. 2 weekends ago, I was headed to the Marshall for an under 2400 tournament. Friday night, I'm driving in round one. My car breaks down in lower Manhattan on a Friday in rush hour about 3:30, 4 p.m. I have the, AAA, so I'm waiting for a tow truck, and they wanted to tow it to Brooklyn. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to play round one, and then probably not be able to play the weekend because I have to go get the car fixed. It was a belt. The belt broke. So I'm there thinking, I really want to play this tournament. So I'm thinking, and I'm looking at mechanic shops in lower Manhattan. I found one 0.6 miles away from where I was pulled over on Soho on Houston. I realized, okay, with the belt off, I could drive that distance because the battery is still charged. It has, a lot of juice before it goes fully dead. So it would, once it got hot a little bit, the car, I pulled over for 20 minutes. I got it to the garage. They said that they would do the belt the next morning on Saturday morning. So I decided to play Friday night and then stay in a hotel on Wall Street Friday night and then pick up the car Saturday morning. And that's what I did because I wanted to play. I said, I'm here. I'm going to make the best out of it. Is there a way to play with that? Now, was it a distraction? Yes, it was a distraction because I couldn't really sleep that well Friday night because I didn't know, okay, it was the belt, but maybe they're going to say something else, right? The mechanic shop's going to say it's this, this, and this. There's other things. So that was a major distraction where I couldn't sleep that well in the hotel Friday night. So I did get the car fixed. It was just the belt. I played Saturday. I played Sunday. But it did affect me, I would say, Sunday. Maybe I was a little tired more than I normally am. And then in the last round, I needed to win to tie for a prize. So did my opponent. I was black. I played an opening I normally don't play. it was too forcing to try to win, and I just played horrible. I mean, it's just like the game was over in 15 moves. I resigned. It was just a poor decision. So that was a kind of a distraction where I let it, get to me too much. And I didn't sleep well, and all of these factors of, what, I'm going to try to play for a win. So overall, that weekend, it was a disadvantage, I would say,
Yeah, the thing with weekend tournaments, which is why I very rarely play in them. I actually haven't played in one in years. I mean, obviously I run the club, so I know I have that. I have my weekly game. But the thing with weekend tournaments, it's like you were saying, you kind of have to do a lot of planning. You got to carve out time. You basically have to clear the decks, right? You have to clear the decks mentally, your schedule. And then you go through all that work, and then something happens to throw a wrench in that. And it's just incredibly frustrating. And I know I'm the type also, like, let's say I did plan a weekend tournament, right? I discuss it at home. We work it out. It's not something I do all the time. And right before you're about to play, you get a call like, something happened at home. It might not even be an emergency that requires you to be there, but I'm the type of person where you get all these thoughts now. You feel guilty being there. Now you feel a little bit selfish. And then it's like, all right, do I withdraw from the tournament and run home? Like, and it's, but that's what happens. And of course, these weekend tournaments are a big commitment. The nice thing about the club is, it's once a week at night for 3 hours. So even if you stay and finish your game, it's like, okay, I'll be home in whatever, 15 minutes. It's not really a big deal. But when you're traveling and you're committed to stay there from the weekend, I'm the type of person I would probably end up either going home or, because then the thinking is, even if I stay, am I really going to play well? But like I said, it's more, I would feel my responsibility would be to run home. That's just how I am.
Right. You have other people that you're, that are dependent on you. And that's definitely a thing to, to consider. It's not when you have a family, those weekend tournaments are not easy. I'm not in that situation. So my situation is different. Of course I do have some distractions, but it's can I use those to my advantage or disadvantage? Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but that's just, everything that comes with, as an adult. And, so if the weekend ones, it's going to be harder for you to play and play your best, then right, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So, you have to weigh those things, in balance in terms of if you're looking to be an out-of-state weekend tournament player or more of a local player. And, that's important. So again, distractions, as an adult, it's something that, local players as compared to out-of-state players, you have to really try to, take into account all of those, different dynamics. If you want to do your best, if you want to put your best foot forward and try to improve as an adult, if you care about the results, how you're going to place in a tournament, the competition, are you going to be in every game? Things like that. That's all something to consider. If you don't, then, you have more luxury where you can just play and try to, do your best, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. See, I'm definitely more of a local weekly club guy just because of scheduling and logistics. It works well for me. If I got back into weekend tournaments, what I would do is I would enter senior events, believe it or not, because I'm actually, I'm I'm just laughing. We think 65, but I mean, actually I'm over 50. So that actually qualifies you for senior events. And with senior events, number one, I don't think rating deflation is as much of an issue because presumably people at that age are going to be established. And at those senior events, you're going to notice you'll see a lot of ratings like 1600, 1700, like exactly that number, which indicates it's probably a rating floor, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. So you could actually probably steal some rating points because let's say you're playing someone whose rating is listed as 1800, exactly 1800. That's most likely his floor. He could probably be maybe 1600 strength now though. Right. So you're playing him, but you're going to be, if you win, you're awarded the rating points as if he really is 1800. So you can catch a lot of guys at their floor. And also because everyone's over 50, I feel like for me, it would be a little bit more of a level playing field as opposed to playing like a 22-year-old who's being coached and studying for hours a day and just chugged like 5 Red Bulls, So the idea, I was going to say the idea of senior tournaments, that's very appealing to me now. I haven't played in one because I'm like just eligible now, but something I might look into.
Yep. But speaking of the 22-year-old chugging the Red Bulls, let's move on to the caffeine aspect. So, another thing that I know a lot of people, they drink coffee or Starbucks or maybe an energy drink, right? So now I have experience because the last couple of years I've gotten into the energy drinks, not Monster or but some of the C4 and then the Ghost ones. And 2 years ago, I think I was doing an Optimum Nutrition at, for before my hike. It had 100 milligrams of caffeine. And then, it's hard to find those. And I moved to the C4s and the Ghost. And those have 200 milligrams per can. And generally in the mornings when I'm doing it. And so I started doing this at my chess games. And what I've noticed is that, okay, if it's one game a day, and you're drinking that can during the one game, I felt fine. I felt perfectly okay. Gave me some energy. I think it did help in a way. But then what happened, Neil, is that when I was playing in the weekend tournaments, okay, like at the Marshall, the 2 games a day, I was having the can in the morning round, and then portions of the game, maybe towards the end of the game, or at least for the second game, I felt like this, like a crash, like I was crashing, like I was kind of tired, like this, the feeling that you get when it starts like going down. And I didn't like that feeling, so, and I knew I'm not going to drink another can. There's no way. If anything, I'm trying to get off of it. I'm trying to wean off of it. But what I did is I did an experiment. Is I said, okay, the can that I do daily is 200 milligrams. So let me divide that by 2 for each game. So basically it was like 100 milligrams per game. And so what I would do is I would have about half the can and then put it in the refrigerator, over there at the club, and then have the second half of the can during the other game. And I felt like that went a long way. Like that helped me a lot. I didn't get that crashing feeling for the second game. I didn't get just too much caffeine for one game. So I think that's important. I think there's something to be taken away for that. If your daily milligram, because I know a lot of people do coffee, and that could be anywhere from 80 to 100 milligrams per cup. So if you drink 2 cups of coffee a day, is it best to have that before round 1, or have one during each game? So that's just something for people, I think, to think about, with this caffeine, especially nowadays. And, there's so much, marketing and the cans and all different types. And ultimately for me, I'm trying to get off of it. And I did 8 days without it. But then I started back up when I was at the Cherry Blossom tournament. We'll talk about that later on. So, but again, I did feel like spreading out the caffeine throughout both games. So if you're a weekend tournament player, like that might be something that you're going to consider to do, as the verse, if you're just a local player where you're playing one game a night, I would never take caffeine at night during the weekday. It's just, because I'm not gonna be able to sleep at night. It's gonna be harder to fall asleep. So, anything that you want to share, let me know. What's your opinions on it?
I'm glad you brought up the whole thing about caffeine and coffee, because this is actually something very personal for me. Now, just a disclaimer for everybody, we're not telling people to drink or not drink caffeine. We're not giving medical advice. Kids should not be drinking caffeine or using these energy drinks. They're very dangerous. But obviously we're discussing this because coffee and caffeine is kind of a big deal for many chess players. Now, I know for me, I cut back significantly. In fact, I'm working on eliminating it, completely. At one point, this is back like in college, I was doing like 4 or 5 cups a day, which,
wow.
Standard cups, which is not good. And for the past, several years, I was doing 2 or 3. Now I'm down to 1. I've been down to 1.
Good. Okay.
Just in the morning. And I'm trying to then eliminate that because I was having issues with headaches and stuff. But one thing I notice, and this is what they say, when you significantly reduce or ideally eliminate caffeine, you actually have more energy. believe it or not, because you don't get those crashes. Like it will help you maybe temporarily, but then you crash and you need that craving. So they say people who quit caffeine actually sleep better, have more energy, and actually feel better. And I noticed a difference. Like I said, I was doing 2 cups a day for past several years. That was my standard, which is not terrible, but I'm down to just 1. And then this summer I want to eliminate that. But I think I have a clearer head when I play. I think I feel better. I'm sleeping better. Now for me, cause I was a big coffee person, getting it down to the 1 cup a day was tough. That was actually, but I'm glad I did it. I haven't gone back. And then, I'm looking to, as I said, eliminate caffeine completely. Now, the other thing is, as kind of an ancillary benefit, I'm actually saving a lot of money by cutting the coffee habit, because a medium coffee here in New York, it's like $3.25 now. I mean, think about it, even if you're getting 1 a day. So now I'm not the type, I'm not like cheap like that. Okay. I mean, if there's something I enjoy doing, I'll pay for it, knowing, but just, I kind of stepped away from it and I kind of just nerded out on the math. I mean, I'm probably saving at least $60 a month.
Oh yeah. I believe,
by cutting down, because the 1 cup a day I have now, I just have it at home with breakfast in the morning. So I make it myself. So if I'm at work or if I'm around, just, driving around, whatever, doing errands on a weekend, I don't feel this need to stop by Starbucks or whatever to get a cup of coffee, because I had it in the morning. And, I mean, the coffee prices are now through the roof anyway, but I just wanted to share that, because reducing caffeine, and as I said, this summer I'm looking to eliminate it completely. I might even mention, once I do that, I'll probably talk about it in an episode or as part of an episode. But that's the goal. I think, for many people, it can do more harm than good. And again, these energy drinks can be very dangerous. And especially a lot of times they market them to kids, but kids should not be, touching that stuff, just because, those energy drinks, because they taste good, it's deceptive. They think it's like some kind of candy drink, but meanwhile, there's 200 milligrams of more caffeine. So those can be, very dangerous.
Some of them now they're making, like the Monsters and some of the C4s now, they're starting to go up to 300 milligrams a can. And that's why, I'm trying to get off of it, obviously. And I did it for 8 days. And so I know I can. And I did have withdrawal symptoms for the first 2-3 days, I remember. So, but again, for chess players that are consuming it during games, you really have to think about the levels that you're doing. And then, is it beneficial for one game, but not the other? But
I was going to say, like, when you withdraw from coffee, right, it's called rebound vasodilation. What happens is, because the caffeine, like, it constricts your blood vessels. So when you eliminate it or reduce it, you're right, everything starts to like swell up. You get this rebound effect because you're denying your body the caffeine, but it goes away. So when you stop coffee or cut back significantly, initially you might feel worse because of the withdrawal symptoms and the rebound vasodilation I mentioned, but it goes away. It might take, it depends. Some people, I mean, I think my brother-in-law said this, some people, it really depends on your system and your constitution. He quit caffeine cold turkey and had 0 withdrawal symptoms. It's not the first time I've heard that. When I cut back, I definitely had some headaches at first. For other people, it can take up to 2 weeks. I mean, Tim Mirabile, our friend, National Master Tim Mirabile, who was the first guest on this podcast, I think he mentioned when he quit caffeine, he felt fantastic. But he said for him, it was like a month of suffering.
I believe it. I believe it's some people's body chemistry.
It really depends. Yeah, some people will knock it in maybe a day or 2 or 3 days. Some people it'll take a few weeks. And, some people, this is probably the exception more than the norm. Some people won't have any withdrawal symptoms at all. But it's an important subject. It's interesting. But yeah, I'm looking to eliminate it completely. I'm almost there. 1 cup to go.
Moving on to thinking about, like getting in like over the board shape. And I was thinking of this too, as maybe for a lot of your members, if they're adult improvers or new to chess, maybe people at the club. And I think that, with the pandemic, a lot of people were playing online, chess.com, Lee Chess. They saw the Queen's Gambit, and obviously this has led to the chess boom that we're seeing today. So I think there was a lot of new members during that time, and I think that it's beneficial. I think before maybe somebody joins the over the board scene, like a local club, like, playing once a week, I think it's good for them to maybe, like some people, like they have like these meetup groups. They meet up like at Starbucks, or remember they used to meet up at Borders, like locally, like coffee house chess. Sometimes they would meet at McDonald's. They would, or even like a little pub, they would get something to eat and they would play, blitz games or, action games over the board. I don't know the strength of the players, but I think that's good to do, because you're looking, you're looking, over the board, three-dimensionally as compared to a screen. And I think that could help a new player getting in shape for playing those once a week, the club atmosphere. And then I think that, the transition, because you get a lot of local players that maybe just play once a week and they don't have any experience playing, out of state. So now like they've played, locally for a couple of months, maybe a few years. But now if something comes up like the amateur team, or someone says, hey, there's this tournament, you can play in a class section, and they give some thought to it. But they don't have any experience playing 2 games a day. And it's interesting because I have a local friend, and he went to a tournament in February, and he realized the 2 classical games a day, it's a lot for his stamina. And he mentioned it, and he mentioned that he doesn't think that he has the stamina for 2 games a day. And if you're not used to that, I totally I could agree. And and so he's thinking about if he does play in the future, in some of these out of state tournaments on the weekends where it's a 5-round tournament or 7, that he would take a few buys, because he feels like it's just too much for him sometimes to play the 2 games a day. So that's something to take into consideration. When a lot of people might feel like they're in over the board shape, but what does that mean for what type of situation? I think that staying in shape, playing once a week is a great thing locally, but it might be a little deceptive, if you're thinking, okay, now I'm doing well like locally, like at those tournaments, and now you say, okay, I want to go play. Again, I'm trying to think of like a low range player or a beginner player or someone that gets more experience, a class player, and they say, okay, now I'm going to start playing, out of state, these tournaments that are 2 games a day. And then they realize, wow, the stamina that it takes to play multiple days where you have 2 games a day, it's not easy. So, and I think that, I think the only way to do that, to get in that shape, is by playing. I don't think there's many remedies for it. People say, I'm going to solve puzzles at home. I'm going to play on chess.com at home. That's okay. That'll keep you maybe sharp for some tactics or some things like that. But the actual stamina that's needed, unless you're doing it, it's just like anything physical, like training, like any sport, unless you're I'm in doing those repetitions, do laps, doing things of that nature, you're probably not going to get into that shape that you need best to be, competing, in games. That's my opinion over the years. And I've done both. I've played, locally, for years, locally at all the local clubs. And I've also played at the same time at tournaments in the city, out of state. So I kind of got used to both. I would say, I prefer the weekend tournaments, because I think for me, one of my problems early on was like rebounding after a loss. I think that that's also something to take into consideration. If you're a player that doesn't rebound well after a loss, those weekend tournaments could be brutal, because you have that next game coming up in 2-3 hours. And, if you don't get over that loss, like it's just gonna, it might just ruin your whole experience for the weekend. And now you're not even competing because you're not putting your best foot forward. As the local, if you lose a game, okay, now you have a couple of days, you go through it, you go over the game, and now you can get ready for the following week. So it's interesting dynamics, so, again, it all depends on, what type of, tournament atmosphere that you want to be in. Do you want to be in one or the other, or do you want to be in both? I think that's just, some advice for players, looking to, to get in over the board shape, take into account those time controls and the, what's needed to compete and have the stamina, as an adult.
Yeah, that's very well said. I know for me, playing 2 classical games a day, that's tough. That's tough. That's not, I mean, assuming, unless you get lucky. I mean, if in your first game, your opponent drops his queen on move 10 and result, if you might get lucky like that. But as far as if you have a full game that goes to the end game, which is common for me, I'm usually one of the last ones to finish because I kind of like those grindy positions. That's just kind of my style. That's just how I like to do it. So 2 games in one day is tough. And I don't think that's an age thing, because even when I was younger, even when I was in my, let's say, 20s or 30s, and I would go to one of these major tournaments, even at that age, it was a lot. I think a lot of that has to do with your own personal makeup and not so much your age. Because as I said, for me, I know others have said this, even as a younger man, that was a lot. The other thing you said about rebounding and sort of going on tilt, I know for me that can be a problem. And you said you might have another game in an hour or two. It's possible you could have another game in like 20 minutes or a half hour, right? Depending on when the previous round started and whether all the games are finished. And that's hard to do. So you play this amazing game, you're winning the whole way, you transpose into a winning end game, and your opponent is kind of being annoying, he's kind of being a scutch the whole game, and you have this winning end game, and then it's moved like 63. You make this one little inaccuracy, and boom, you're now fighting back, and your opponent ends up winning after like 85 moves. And it's just soul crushing. You mean to tell me 30 minutes later, you're going to be able to shake that off and play another game? I mean, that's not normal. If you can do that, that's almost like not normal. Like, how can that not? So that's the one thing with the weekend tournaments. Like, you really going to be able to shake off all that emotional baggage and psych yourself up and start from scratch? That's tough stuff. Nick, let's change gears. You recently finished second in the under 2100 of the Cherry Blossom, which was in Dulles, Virginia, if that's correct. Yeah, I know you feel like that was a learning experience for you. So maybe you could give us some tips, some things for adult improvers that you learned from the tournament. Because I know before we recorded, you were sharing that you felt it was a big learning experience for you.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was a 9-round classical tournament, game 90 plus 30-second increment. I have a lot of experience at that time control due to the weekend Marshall Chess Club tournaments, the under 2400 and monthly FIDE premiere that they do. So I was very used to the time control. I think that's something important for players that do go on to play out of state to take into consideration. I have a local friend who, he plays locally only. And now, he did mention playing at the World Open or wanting to play in Vegas, a CCA event that's 40 moves in 80 minutes, 2 minutes a move, sudden death 30. He doesn't really have much experience in that time control. So I said, before you go on to doing a venture like this, why don't you go play locally? Because there is a local place that has that time control, or very similar where it's 2 minutes a move, sudden death 30. I said, you go practice it for $45-$50 before you make a big commitment and then finding out, in the World Open that this control isn't best for you. So that's another form of being tournament savvy, getting used to a time control, before you make a big decision on, on playing. So for me, the Cherry Blossom, that time control I was used to was game 90, 30-second increment, a lot of experience in it. And I wanted to play in the open section. And I wanted to figure, just play well, try to get an even score, maybe pick up rating points. So I went Wednesday. I drove in 7 hours of traffic. I got there 2 hours before I checked in. And I played Friday night, and I played round 1. I was black against the WGM, 2300 something. And I just didn't feel at my best. Maybe because it was too much driving. I didn't get settled with the area. I didn't know where I would be eating afterwards. And, I didn't go to Walmart, get my supplies for the room. So maybe that's what affected my decision-making during the game, or at least some point, because I made a bad decision during the game. She played an opening where I had think a little bit, and I found the couple of right moves in a row. But then I just gave up a dark squared bishop, and that I shouldn't have. It's not thematic for the position, and I just went on to lose the game in a way that I probably normally wouldn't have. So it was a bad decision. So I realized, what, like, I had some distractions going on family wise, and I said, what, maybe, this isn't the section for me. Even I wanted to, I had the right aspirations, but maybe I'm not in form. I'm not, like, really at my peak to be doing this. So the organizers were nice. They let me drop out and enter the under 2100 section, which started the next night. Thursday night was round one for that tournament. 2 games Saturday, 2 games Sunday, 2 games, I'm sorry, 2 games Friday. One game, the first game was Thursday night, 2 games Friday, 2 games Saturday, 2 Sunday, 2 Monday. So 9 rounds. So I didn't have to pay anything extra. They were very nice. And so on Thursday in the morning, I went out to Walmart, got my stuff. I got familiar with the area where I would be eating, all different restaurants, 3-4 miles away. Again, it's outside of DC. Traffic wasn't an issue. I went to LA Fitness. I went to the sauna, did all my things I normally would do. And so I came back. I played Thursday night, and I had dinner, 2 hours or so before the round. I took a shower before the game. I had a little piece of chocolate, 100% cocoa, because I figured with trying to get off caffeine, maybe that's something good to do. And I felt comfortable. It was a long game. I was Black Friday night, played a young girl, very tough opponent, and I grinded out a game in the end game. I felt more comfortable, and I felt like I was kind of more at ease. But now what happened, actually, that Thursday night, sitting next to me at the board Thursday night, was a gentleman that kept coughing. And it was a distraction for me, my opponent, the other opponents, and he just kept coughing. I don't know if it was a nervous issue or he was sick. But somewhere Thursday night when I was sleeping, I started developing this head cold pretty bad. And I think it developed into like the sinus infection. I still have it. And I just started getting sick. And now I'm thinking, well, look at this. I'm playing this big tournament, 9 rounds, and just as soon as it's getting started, like, I'm sick. And, like, this is not what I wanted. I want to, not have distractions, just come here, over a couple of days. But you know what? I said, maybe this is meant to be. I have experience playing sick. I have experience playing with these distractions from the weekend tournaments at the Marshall. I'm like, maybe this is just the way it's meant to be. And so I did form a routine for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I would wake up in the morning 3 hours before the first game. I would have a breakfast, more than what I would normally eat. I'm not a big breakfast person. Normally a 250 calorie to 400 calorie protein bar is enough for me for breakfast. But I figured, it's important. I have more calories. So I had a full breakfast, and I think it definitely helped. I played my game Friday morning, round 2. And sure enough, the person sitting next to me, the same person, coughing. And now I could tell, like, in his eyes, like, he was sick. And I'm not feeling good at all now. I went to the organizer. I said, listen, this is the situation that developed last night. It's distracting me, my opponents. I said, I felt fine coming here. Last night he's coughing. Now I'm sick. I'm not feeling well. I'm not saying it's him, but I'm just saying, is it possible with his cough to put him in a separate location? They were nice. Sure enough, they granted that. And after round 2, he played the remainder of his games in a separate section, in a separate room location. So I never had that happen. That was really nice. But regardless, I was sick for the rest of the tournament. And after my game, I did win round 2 against another young girl on Friday morning. I went out to eat locally. I had a bowl of chicken pho at a Vietnamese place. Came back to my room about 2 hours in advance, just laid down. I'm trying to conserve energy. I would go on my notebook computer, look at some opening lines, and then I would shut it off about 45 minutes before the round started. I would shut it off. I would just relax. And then 15 minutes before the game, I would take a shower for my evening game, get dressed, and then go downstairs and play round 3. Round 3, I was round 3. I'm trying to think of round 3. I was black, and it was a tough game. And I played well. I won the game. And I kept doing the same thing day after day. And that routine, of, going out to eat like 3 hours before, coming back, looking at some chess openings for like, an hour, relaxing, taking a shower, and leaving the room with a small piece of chocolate, eating it. Like, it just formed this routine for me, and it really helped. And I think that's important. I did room by myself. I brought my fan with me. I sleep with a fan. I've been sleeping with a fan since I've been a teenager. I like the noise. It helps me fall asleep. If you're rooming with someone, that's probably not going to be the case. You're not going to be able to get in the shower at the same time. There's all these logistics, right? When you room with someone may snore. So for me, rooming by myself, it's something I'm going to do probably now, just moving forward. Playing out of state, it does cost more money, but it's I'm not playing out of state every month, so it's something that I'm gonna do. And also, I did stay an extra night. I reserved the room the extra night because the last 2 games were on Monday, and I figured if I'm going to be in a running, like, I want to have that room. I don't want to check out 10 o'clock in the morning after the first game, not have a room to go back to. So I stayed the extra night. That helped. That's something to consider too when playing out of state. My expectations going to the tournament, I did want to play in the open section. I just felt I didn't feel prepared enough. So I did go into the under 2100 section, and I said, okay, I'm just going to try to compete, do my best. I didn't know I was going to get sick Thursday night. I did. I had experience with it. I said, okay, 1 game at a time. I formed a routine, tried to conserve energy. And all of those things certainly helped. There's players that say, play in your section, play up, all different pieces of advice for young players, adults. I've done both, I've experienced in both. So, I've won class sections before. I've done well in some open sections. So, experience does count. So I did end up winning my 4th game. I won the first 4 games in a row. I was, in the lead by myself. I was the only 4-0. Round 5, I was black against a tough 2100 something. He's been over 21. It's an under 2100 section, but he has been close to 2200, a 26-year-old Ukrainian player. And I played pretty well out of the opening. He did prepare for me. I played in a way that was a little maybe different. He made some kind of opening on the right pawn break with G5. G6 to G5 to open up dark squares in the game on the king side. And I did actually get I did equalize, maybe get slightly better position. Then I got overconfident in the position. I missed a queen E6 check, and he just got the better position. At some point, the engine saying that he was winning. He didn't find the line. I just tried to defend as best as I could. And sure enough, the resistance I put up led into opposite colored bishop ending. We both had a rook. And we both had 4 pawns each, but there was just nothing for either side to play for. And, we agreed to a draw after a very long game. And that was on Saturday night. So I did have 4.5 out of 5 going into Sunday, tied for first with someone else. Then I did get paired against that person, a 12-year-old, who eventually did win the tournament. We played our 5th round game on Sunday morning. And I figured, what? People are probably preparing for me. So am I going to play something different than I normally do, or just play what I know? And I think this is important as well. If you're at the GM level, it's different, obviously. They're going to have more opening knowledge, be able to play something else at a high level, obviously. Me, not so much. I said, what? I'm just going to play what I normally play. If they prepare for me, that's fine.
All right, so that'll do it for this week. I want to thank my friend, National Master Nick Panico, for coming on the pod and sharing his thoughts and his tournament experience and his words of wisdom. As always, we really appreciate you listening, and I hope you win your next game. Have a great day, everybody.